What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. We've got a great guest today. It's Jason McCourty, former Patriot, former Quick Slants co-host, along with his twin brother. Jason's the nicer brother. They're both pretty good, though, and Jason has been working at CBS, so he's getting a look at the entire league as he works alongside Andrew Catalon calling games, also with Tiki Barber. But we brought Jason in because he's had his eyes all over the league, and he was in Foxborough in the offseason and training camp watching the development of Drake Maye and the Patriots in general. And of course, he knows Jerod Mayo well. So with no further ado, here he comes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, he got his start on Quick Slants. Just to remind you, one of the best color guys in the business right now for CBS. It's Jason McCourty, 2018 Super Bowl hero. Thank you so much for taking the time, bud.
Oh, anytime. Good to see you. Quick Slants, it was my start, man. It's because of you I'm at stardom now, I guess.
It's just a trampoline of excellence. You follow the entire league, and you're doing a great job of it, but I'm sure that you have a rooting interest and personal interest in how the Patriots do. If you could sit with Jerod right now, and he would say, Jason, tell me what I should be doing here. Advise me on the landmines. What would you say to him?
I think first off is keep swinging. I think for Jerod, you don't know what you don't know. And becoming a head coach, I think you can see the progression and how he's learning. I think early on, especially talking to the media and being, I think, very open and transparent about a lot of it. I think as of late, he's cut back on some of that. Obviously, everybody talked about the soft comment with the team. I thought Brady addressed that well of explaining exactly what that meant from the years of being in New England. But, man, my main thing would just be keep swinging. I think when he took this job, you knew it wasn't going to be easy. Like, you looked at the roster, you looked at the setup, and so they've had some rough patches, but I think you got a quarterback, and that's half the battle.
Yeah, we're going to get to him in a second. But when I look at the setup and the roster, with the Patriots kind of whistling past the graveyard, hoping against hope, crossing their fingers and toes, to think that a first-year head coach with a first-year play caller and a first-year defensive coordinator and a first-year offensive line coach and a first-year wide receivers coach, that it was going to go smoothly. It's kind of tough to pull off.
Yeah, I was in other cities before I got to New England. So it's a little bit of, you've just seen for a lot of the people now success for the last 2 decades. And that's the expectation, which it should be. You should expect your favorite team or your organization to win, but it's not that easy. And I think to your point, those are some of the things that you have to nip in the butt, like wide receivers talking in the media, and you have Polk saying he has the best hands in the league, and then you're not making tough contested catches. You have veterans like Osborne posting screenshots of text messages, stuff like that, like you just can't have. And I would urge players, if you like your head coach, you like the direction your team is going, like shut the hell up in the media. Go out there on a Sunday and make plays and ball, and leave all the rest of the stuff to be determined by front office, coaches, and all of that to handle it. Because that was my thing. When you're on teams that aren't winning, everybody's looking for any fracture or any crack within the organization to sow dissension, or a coach that doesn't have control over the locker room or anything like that. So that, from the outside looking in, that's bothered me, of being around the team in the preseason and seeing the energy and the love that everybody had for the newfound way that everything was rolling. And then you see things like that happen. It's just like, well, that's not adding up. And I think you make a great point where you're so used to having success, and the expectation when you hear New England Patriots that when it's not going your way, sometimes people don't know how to react in adversity because you haven't had to deal with it. But you had to assume that it wasn't going to be smooth sailing of a season.
It's funny because I look at the players, and if you have arguably 30, 31, 32nd best roster in the league, and you're not winning already, and a guy's a pain in the ass, Bill was never shy about saying, you know what, I'm all set with him, even if it was a second-round pick, a Duke Dawson or anybody else. And I do think that if we're losing, we're not going to lose and also be unlikable. Would you, from a player's perspective, analyst perspective, be encouraging to a front office type and saying, cut your losses, don't hold on too long? I know it's early for you and you don't want to admit mistakes, but cut your losses where you have to.
I think And each case is different.
Yep.
A guy really has to be far gone at this point, because the first part you mentioned, where if you have a bottom of the league roster, like just getting rid of guys that can actually help, especially young guys. Like
You're right.
I have no tolerance for veterans that don't understand kind of where you are and how to move forward. Because if you have a room full of young guys and you have your one or two, maybe three veterans within that room, if they're not doing things the right way, there's no shot the young guy is. So for young guys, no, you give them time to develop. You talk to them. You don't know what you don't know. So you explain what it's like to be a pro. For veterans, there's going to be a standard and an expectation. And when that's not met, then there has to be repercussions. I just think when you don't do that, it just continues to fester into other parts of the roster. I remember being a young guy in Tennessee, and we had veterans that were doing things the right way. And you'd have a young guy come in and start to do things his own way. And as a vet, you're looking like, if they're going to let him get away with it, then why am I following the rules? So I think that's the trickle-down effect that you have to make sure it doesn't occur. And whether you're winning or you're losing, you got to be moving in a positive direction.
And that's the sucker punch that they experienced with losing Andrews on offense, Bentley on defense, not to mention Peppers. And that's a kind of a horse of a different color with his situation. But the way he played football was the kind of example that you would want to have in your locker room. Well, if Jabril Peppers has been in the league this long and he plays that way, I probably should do the same thing.
Absolutely.
How hard is it for players when a season is lost after, 9 games or so to maintain the focus, attention, and not be self-oriented?
It's tough. And I don't think it's possible to not be self-oriented. And that's the thing. And I'm speaking from experience of many of my seasons being that way, where the reality is when you're not winning, there's one thing that even the winning football teams, the consistency every year is there's going to be change. Team goes and wins the Super Bowl, there are going to be guys that get paid to go elsewhere. The team's not going to be the same. Well, hell, when you're losing, that is magnified by 20. I've been on teams where you come back the next year and it's 30 new players because you were 2-14 or 3-13 the year before. So at this rate, if you know your team is not winning, you're crazy as hell if you're not going out there on a Sunday trying to show 31 other teams what you can do, because whether it's your fault you're losing or not, at the end of that season, change has to come, because the people in charge, you got to be able to look at the roster and say, hey, we made X amount of changes, and that's why we feel like this year gives us a better chance to be successful. You can't run it back with all the same guys when you're only winning 2 games.
They're really trying to thread the needle, aren't they, ownership, who I'm sure you have a good relationship with, but they really wanted to try and thread the needle by maintaining the culture that was in place, which is the most coveted culture in professional football history, I would think, in terms of winning, keeping your foot there, but also moving into the future. And that's a really hard needle to thread, isn't it, Jason? I don't even know what the question is there, except from the outside looking in, I can see why you didn't want to go new broom sweeps clean, and you'd say, well, let's see how this guy works out and that guy works out in the future. But it's real. What they're trying to execute is extremely hard.
Listen, when you have a coach that was there for as long as Bill was and as successful as Bill was, I don't know that there is an easy succession plan or one that just carries you right over and you just keep the winning rolling. And not only that, Bill had left, no Brady. So there's so many things that happen. And then just turnover of the roster, the Devin McCourtys, the Matthew Slaters, the Julian Edelmans, those guys where it seemed like throughout those kind of 2 dynasties, you can say there was carryover, where as one was aging out, they were grooming the next one to come up. And Tom, you've been covering the team forever. When Dev and Slade and Jules and Gronk, as all those guys got older, you guys were looking in the locker room and you couldn't figure out who was going to be next. N'Keal Harry's, Jawan Williams, the different guys that were drafted high to kind of fill, you said Duke Dawson, those guys in that sense, they didn't pan out. So when that happens, now you're kind of trying to hit reset every single season and banking on this next class to really hit, where you need to have a few of those. You're watching Christian Gonzalez week in and week out going against your favorite receivers, making plays. Those are the type of guys you need. Mapu's getting on the field. You need to see those guys come to fruition with a Keon White and all of those guys, where it's just like, all right, we're drafting the right guys, we're teaching them how to be pros, and now we can kind of stack it up and each year bring in the right free agents to continue to build this.
There are some nice foundational pieces, especially when you point it out that way. Gonzalez, quieter guy, but right now I would say the guys who are in that locker room, who were with the team when it was winning Super Bowls and understood the culture really intimately. Bentley not as much because he was hurt the year you guys won. Mm-hmm. But Jonathan Jones and David Andrews, two undrafted guys, are your kind of main team leaders. What am I driving at? That there should be more drafted guys that they acquired in the past few years that are on their second contracts to carry that culture forth, the way Hightower and Solder and Devin and ancient history. Let's get into the current history. Drake Maye has exceeded what I thought he would be able to do as a player. How about you?
Agreed. And being there in the preseason, and then as the season started, the different combination of offensive linemen, just without even seeing anything Drake Maye did, it was just like that makes it extremely tough on a quarterback. And then, like you mentioned, you lose David Andrews. That's so much. And then you look at the combination of what the wide receiver room looks like, just talent-wise on paper, it's not a strong room. So for a quarterback to go have success in that, it's been fun to watch. And I think as you look across the league, the one thing the Patriots are doing, when you have a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, you go out and you pay a guy like Antonio, you run the football. And that's something that they've stuck to make it a little easier on Drake Maye. And he's not afraid to pull the ball down and take off himself. But for so many years, I'll be on a team where you get the ball, you're in a 2-minute drill, you're down 7, and you're already thinking about what you're doing for dinner because you know there's no shot your quarterback's driving you down there to keep you to either win the game or tie the game up. And watching what Drake Maye did Sunday on that last play of the 3-man rush and him holding on to the ball and finding it and making a play, but just that drive to get the ball down there, like you look at that and you're like, all right, like you got a guy. I remember being in Tennessee and the coach drafted Andrew Luck and we're playing against Luck and he's getting beat up and you're on the other side and you're just like, damn, from Peyton Manning now this guy, they have a guy. So watching Drake Maye this year, some of the throws he makes and just even being around him, he has this like goofiness to him where I don't think things bother him externally. Right. And he just goes and does his thing. And he very much seems like one of the guys. And as good as Brady was and as much of a superstar as he was within the locker room, he felt like he was one of the guys. And I think you need to have that characteristic as a quarterback.
Jason, in addition to the surprise that you would have with Drake Maye, are you further surprised that it looks like the top 3 quarterbacks at the top of the draft can all play? I mean, this happened like, I wouldn't be mentioning it if we hadn't seen the Zach Wilson, Trey Lance over and over and over, whether it's Sam Darnold, all these guys who go to crappy situations and never have a chance to showcase their wares. Even Maye is having a chance to showcase that he's really friggin' good.
Absolutely. You can throw Bo Nix in there as well. Another guy who's leading his team and they're finding ways to win games. And it just goes to show you, Caleb Williams got beat up on this last week. I don't think they ran the ball enough. But you look at when you bring a guy in with as much talent as these quarterbacks are having coming from college, but totally different from an NFL system. I think for an Alex Van Pelt to a Cliff Kingsbury, these guys are doing a great job, Sean Payton as well, of incorporating things from the college game, but making it easier when you watch them. When you watch Jaden Daniels and what the Commanders are doing on offense with the no huddle, the different looks they're doing, the run scheme of pulling guys and doing so much, it opens it up for him. And then these guys have the ability to run and it just changes the game. I look at what AVP does with the boots and all the play actions and being able to run the football. It makes life easier on a quarterback like Drake Maye, and Sean Payton's doing the same. There was games that they won where Bo Nix is barely throwing the ball and they're relying strictly on the run game. And then the next time they come out against the Panthers and they're throwing the ball all over the field. So when you can find ways to just win, I think it builds the quarterback's confidence, whether he's running it or he's throwing it. But now I think for these young guys, it's like, well, damn, I can play in this league. Like I'm looking at it, I'm making highlight plays and I'm doing my thing and I feel comfortable. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, it must be wild I think Maye kind of ran over Simmons the other day a little bit. The guy, he was off balance.
Yeah.
And Simmons was a little shook up. Took him a second to get up. And I'm like, holy, did he just run over Simmons? And it must be kind of one of those, and you probably experienced it coming from Rutgers when you were a 6th round pick and you said, my God, I could play with these guys.
Yeah. It was funny. We talked to Bo Nix, and he talked about just how much fun he has playing in the NFL, and just a good perspective of this thing can be so big and there's so many naysayers. And he was like, I'm at quarterback and Derwin James is blitzing off the edge. He said, I took a picture with Derwin James when I was a kid, and now here I am on the football field with him as he's trying to sack me and I'm running around him. I think for all of these guys, you're out there and you're playing against some of the guys you were just looking up to a few years ago, and you're outplaying and making plays on them.
Last question, Jason, and thanks for the time. I put out a poll today on Twitter saying, if hypothetically you had the opportunity again right now to take Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, or Drake Maye, who would you want for the New England Patriots? And I gave as an option, Maye is the best fit. Then Daniels, of course, MVP candidate, and then Williams, he's a generational talent. Came back, and that's how fans are. You just watch the kid be unbelievable on Sunday. 63% said they got the right fit with Maye. But I do think Maye is such a good fit because he's got that kind of stoic flatline personality. Mm-hmm. He's a big kid. He's going to be able to take a thrashing. And I just think that it's a weird region up here. It's a demanding region. And you can't have a guy who'd be rabbit-eared. So I think that Maye is the best fit. What do you think?
I do like Maye. With the way Jaden Daniels has played from week 1 all the way through, that's through a rib injury. It's hard for me, if you're just looking at the quarterbacks in totality, to say I'm picking anybody over the way Jaden Daniels, like he's in the MVP conversation this 100%. Season. It's hard to say I'm going with someone over Jaden Daniels. But to your point, I think the way all 3 of these guys have played, I mean, Caleb Williams, at one point, people were calling him a bust over a game or two. And then the next week you see him against the Panthers and he's going right through his progression. Then they're playing the Jags in London. All of these guys, you continue to see the growth throughout their game, how much better they're getting. And then you also got to remember with Drake Maye, he didn't play the first few games. So all of these guys have a few games of experience on him to where they are right now, with him kind of getting a chance to sit and watch Jacoby for a little while. So I think it's going to be fun just to compare all of these guys in the future to see, because I would argue that Drake Maye is in the worst situation out of all of the quarterbacks that are playing right now, including Bo Nix. So his ability to make throws and do some things is that much more impressive because of the situation and the people that surround him.
And you've got to be ridiculously resilient, which is why it's kind of helpful that he was on a North Carolina team where he was the only pony at the entire farm. Is that a thing? I don't think it is. What's the assignment this week? What do you got?
I'm in Indy. I got Colts and Bills this week, so should be a decent one. Figuring out this Flacco and Richardson and all of that fun stuff.
It's fun. I'm like, again, once a guy ends up where Tony Richardson has, and it happened, it's year 2, and they already just said it. Okay, unusable. It's tough.
I had Bryce a week ago. I had Panthers and Broncos, and the same thing.
It's the fuse is very short. The patience is very thin. Thank you so much for your time. We always appreciate it. Let us know in the near future whether you think Drake is Josh Allen 2.0, as Devon Godshaw alleged. He did. All right. Hope you enjoyed that. I thought he was unbelievably good. Great insight all the way through. Make sure you check out the next Pats podcast. Phil will have that up tomorrow. I will also be talking to Chris Sims about the quarterbacks around the NFL and how he would develop Drake Maye. That'll be later this week as well. And Phil will join me again to talk Patriots Bears as the Patriots try to right the ship after losing to Tennessee. All right. Enjoy your week. Thank you.